Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our ACCBE Building Trustee Excellence County Office of Education Budgets. Please, if you haven't already done so, do add your name, your county, and your role in our chat. And our session will be going from 12 noon to 1 today. Our agenda today will be our welcome to an ACCB overview and speaker introduction. I'm Beverly Gerard, and I'm from the San Mateo County Office of Education Board. I'm a trustee. I'm currently vice president, and I'm also on the board of directors for ACCBE. Our guest speaker today, I'm very excited to say, will be Misty Key, the Deputy Superintendent, Fiscal and Administrative Services of the Ventura County Office of Education. She's going to be giving a 45-minute presentation, and then we'll have about 5 minutes for a Q&A session, and then we'll have our wrap-up and our evaluation. We are 46 members strong. I'm so happy to report. This is a snapshot of all of the county offices of education that have joined ACCBE. And we are just thrilled that we have so many members and more going to be joining, we hope, soon. ACCBE really functions by a mission and a vision. And our ACCBE mission is to empower county board members to be confident advocates for all students. And our vision is to be the leading voice for California's county boards of education, improve the outcomes for students, families, and communities. We also have 4 pillars that we operate by. And the first one is to advocate and amplify. And we are solely dedicated to develop and advocate on legislative and policy issues for county boards of education. We really want to ensure a unified and strong voice representing the unique interests of the county boards on issues impacting county offices of education. We also develop partnerships for success, and we are really committed to building strong partnerships with the California Superintendents Association and coalitions of other groups that are aligned to leverage and resource our county boards and support student success. And then right now, we're doing number 3, which is to engage, elevate, and empower. ACCB is really committed to building the leadership capacity within county boards, fostering collaboration and peer support. And certainly, last but not least, is looking forward. And we really want to focus on innovative solutions to address evolving challenges and changes in education. Now it is with a great deal of pleasure that I want to introduce to you Misty Key. She has been the Deputy Superintendent, Fiscal and Administrative Services for the Ventura County Office of Education for 13 years. She has been in the school business for over 24 years. She worked at the Merced County Office of Education for 11 years and was the Assistant Superintendent Business Services. She also serves as a consultant for FCMAT and on the team that evaluates the fiscal oversight practices for those county offices of education with a school district receiving an emergency appropriation. She serves as a mentor in school business as well as a presenter in various workshops and trainings. And if you've seen previous things that we have done, she has worked with CCBE and ACCBE in the past. She has both a bachelor's degree in finance and a master's business administration degree in finance. She previously worked in the private sector for 11 years in accounting and finance for Smith, Barney, Long's, Drugs, and Kinko's corporate offices. And with that, I would like to turn this over to our guest speaker, Misty Keys.
Okay, thank you very much, Bev. It's great
Welcome.
to see all of you. I appreciate the opportunity to share just a little bit about county office budgets. I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint and share my screen so that we can get some of the content ready. So this afternoon, for your lunchtime, I'm going to try to keep all of you engaged. I know it's your lunchtime and sometimes it's hard to stay focused on Zoom. The information definitely is of interest to you because you've logged in today and you're dedicated to learning a little bit much. So I really appreciate your time and energy and effort. And I'm going to do my best to try to keep you engaged. And if you have questions at any point in time, I'm sure you understand the format within Zoom. You can throw a question into the chat. Deb is going to try to help us out to make sure that we're noticing any question you have. But I want to start off by at least going over quickly the agenda. And I know the materials of this PowerPoint are going to be made available to all of you who have joined us today, as well as those who are not joining us, but they've registered for the event. So I am going to go probably a little bit fast over some of the content. There's a lot more content than we have time to review, but it's for your resource in the future. You can reference some of the content that is available as a resource. So for the introduction, or for the agenda today, we've done the introduction. School finance lingo. So that's one of the areas that hopefully will enlighten you a little bit more. There's a lot of acronyms in our public education industry in all the various areas. So if you're working on student services, educational services, the finance department, it seems like there's acronyms in every department that is just a little bit different. So I'm going to try to review some of the lingo, the acronyms, and the terminology that you might be hearing your CBO or your fiscal folks sharing to kind of demystify some of those languages and verbs and words that we're using. Then we're going to cover some of the COE budget basics. We're going to review the differences between a school district budget and a county office of education budget. There is quite a bit of difference between the two types of budgets for the local education agencies. We're going to review some of the aspects about your role as a county board trustee in that budget process for the County Office of Education. Then I'm going to give you some tips and hints of maybe some aspects that you as a trustee might consider reviewing either ahead of time or during the board meeting when you're reviewing a budget or listening to the status update of your county office's budget. Then, of course, any questions that you want to ask of me, feel free to chime in. So, are you guys ready to be engaged? Because if you have your cell phone out, you're going to need your cell phone. This is an active participation. So, let's move on to our first question. I've got a Mentimeter. Is anyone familiar with Mentimeter? It's where you take out your phone, you use your camera feature, and you're going to answer a live survey. So let me pop up the survey. Okay, starting off, this is great. We've got some answers. In one or two words, you as a county board trustee, what does the County Office of Education budget mean to you? If anyone's having trouble launching the Mentimeter, you can let us know too. It looks like several of you found the QR code. Complicated, isn't that the truth? We'll wait just a couple more minutes. It looks like some of you are still working on some responses. Hey, so we've got some more responses popping up. Never enough funds. That's the truth all over public education. Not easily explained. Okay, that gives me some ideas. Complicated, black or red, tight for sure. The black hole. That's interesting. Okay. Um, well, we're going to have some more Mentimeter um, engagement for you guys to share your input as we go through some of the slides. So thank you for your input so far. It's good to know your thoughts so far into the session. So just a brief introduction about what is a budget in the first place. So the reality of it is it's a stack of paper with a bunch of numbers on it. Nowadays, it's probably an electronic version of that same stack of papers. Could be 200 pages if you are receiving the full budget report from the standardized account code structure format that we have to submit. Tons of numbers on it, very complex. But what does it represent? It represents the plan of the county office to spend the myriad of funds and resources that are provided to the County Office of Education with the intent of how to carry out those services, actions, and the expenditures of the County Office of Education. The budget is a living document. So I'm pretty sure it's well known that the budget operates through the fiscal year of July 1 to June 30. And yet the budget itself is an evolving aspect of figures that are updated with new information. So the budget itself is only as good as the day that someone pushed stop on compiling the edits with the information that they know. So it's always changing and it's never 100% right. That might be concerning for you as a county board trustee, which one of your main functions is to approve the budget of the County Office of Education and review those updates through the first interim report and the second interim report. The reality of it is the budget is always wrong because it's updates with information known up to the moment in time. A fiscal person who is compiling information has a due date for first interim. January 31st would be the due date. Maybe on February 2nd, we finally got a grant award notice from the entity, maybe the state or the federal government, that finalizes the amount of revenue the county office is to receive. But we didn't get that information until after we finalized the information as of January 31st. So immediately there's subsequent information that creates the budget that was finalized as of January 31st to be not exactly accurate. So hopefully that helps you understand why it's never exactly accurate. It's the best projection that we have in the moment of time to estimate the revenues and expenditures that we have going on in the county office. And it's always going to be adjusting and evolving as time goes on. So in summary, the budget, it's a plan and it's projections. It's not the actual money itself. The budget does not have the cash. The cash sits in the county treasury. Okay, so moving along, what else does the budget do? So now that we know the basics of what the budget is intended to provide, it's a financial outline. So our industry of public education is not about money. It takes money to educate students, though. So the budget itself provides that outline of how it is we're going to spend those public dollars that come to the local education agency. So our purpose is to serve students and provide services for educators and support the overall system of public education. So when we're doing that, most of it, we're in a people business, and most of our expenditures are in salaries and benefits. So the budget itself provides details for the programs to operate the schools and those services. The budget also accomplishes our way to communicate to the community how it is we're protecting the taxpayer dollars and we're supporting the students in which they're intended to serve. So it's a public document that is allows the LEA to be transparent on those expenditures. So most of us at this point should be aware there is a standardized format that all LEAs are to follow. We all refer to it as the SACS reports, standardized account code structure. It's SACS is the acronym. The reason we all have to follow those same reports is so that it's easy to compare the budget between one LEA and another. So for example, all of us with our County Office of Education budget, we all have a standardized format. So if you were to look at Alameda County budget versus Placer County budget versus Sutter County budget, we could at least be looking at the same format of document, and the only thing that should be changing is the numbers within it and some of the narrative descriptions. Otherwise, the format, once you're familiar with the format, you could look across multiple LEAs and be familiar with the format. The other thing that the budget does is it helps the LEAs stay compliant. We receive so much funding with strings attached or restrictions on how it is those funds are to be spent. So the budget facilitates the process to allow us to adhere to those compliance details. So for example, we might get a grant that is to be spent on career education programs only. So how do we make sure that we're not spending our career education funds on maybe our special ed program or maybe our juvenile court and community schools programs? Well, the budget allows us to do that because we account for those dollars separately. So we can code the career education teachers specifically to the grant dollars that are meant to be career education only. So if you can picture what a summarized budget looks like that you guys receive, it's made up of lots of details that get rolled up into the common terminology of unrestricted and restricted funds. And we'll go over the definition of that as well. Okay, so with that, we can move on to communication. Communication is only as good as the person trying to get across a message and the person on the other side receiving and listening to that message. So, how is it that your CBO can communicate clearly to all of you who dedicate your time and your service efforts to lead public education, except maybe you don't work in an LEA and maybe your professional job and your professional expertise is not school business, and yet you're supposed to understand what it is that your CBO or your fiscal team is sharing. So the power of communication, first, it's to understand each other. There could be a whole language in and of itself just to describe school finance. So let's review some of those common lingos. I have multiple slides that define each one of these. So if there's anything anybody wants me to specifically talk about, we can dive deeper into it. But common lingo that you hear, I've said it a lot myself already. Local education agency. So the term LEA, we're going to review that. Also, unrestricted and restricted funding. The terms grant and entitlement, those two terms are used a lot. We got a new grant, there's a Title I entitlement, there's this. You probably hear those terms. Another one that is sometimes confusing, and if you're not a math expertise, the terms enrollment versus average daily attendance. Those two terms are used very often in public education. And why are they used? Because both of those figures drive our funding and our appropriations. So you'll hear the terms a lot. I know you hear them already, but understanding truly what those terms mean is very important for your role as a trustee, just so that you could keep up with what it is that's being shared when maybe your superintendent or your CBO starts to talk about average daily attendance or enrollment and what does that do to our funding. The local control funding formula itself and the local control accountability plan. The local control accountability plan also represents one of your functions to review the local control accountability plan and then also adopt that plan for the County Office of Education. So I'm sure you're very familiar with that work. Actuals versus budget. This is another terminology that is very loosely said as if it's easy to understand. I know there's folks out there that probably are not accountants and their profession is not finance. So sometimes the lingo itself can be confusing when we talk about fund balance or cash and what is the difference. Multi-year projection, and then reserve for economic uncertainty, and then encumbrance. So all of these terms are probably pretty commonly said, but let's take a moment. We're going to get you guys engaged again. Let's demystify um, something. So for all of you at board meetings, I know you listen to your CBO, maybe some other fiscal team, even your other folks at the county office, they probably share a lot of information with you guys at each board meeting. But what is it that they say that's a mystery to you? And you would like some help when demystifying that. So let's take a moment and do our next Mentimeter prompt and see the results. What is it that we can demystify today? I'm assuming the QR code is still up. If you did the QR code previously, it might still be on your phone. If you keep your phone up to the Mentimeter website, it should just prompt you to the next question without having to rescan it. Cash flow. Oh, yes. Cash versus fund balance. That's good. Cash on hand. I would love to have some cash on my hand. Cash seems to be a common theme. Oh, indirect. Okay, that is something I don't have as content in the slides, but I'll be happy to talk about that. And I'll give just another moment in case there's any other thoughts. Now's your time. Your CBO isn't here, so whatever crazy thing they might be saying to you at a board meeting, you can ask now, and I'll try to help you understand so you don't have to ask some of the things that they mention. It might be not as clear. Okay, well, I wrote down some of these, so let's get back to the presentation. And before we move on, I want to address some of them. I've got cash as an actual topic within the agenda, so we're definitely going to talk about that in a few slides. But let's address one of them that I know I don't have in the content, which is the term indirect. So indirect stands for, in the private sector, it's commonly called overhead. And so it's the cost of the organization that is attributed to just existing. So if you can picture some of those functions, in order for an organization to exist, we have a human resources department because we hire people. We fingerprint them, we get their HR record, their personnel record. So that's a function to the organization. So when you're running a school, you need to hire teachers. So it's the overhead concepts of what it takes to run an organization. Human resources, budgeting, accounting, because we pay bills, even the technology. Nowadays, technology is so instrumental into the classroom, and yet no one even thinks about how it is that the technology is facilitated within a public education system. But guess what? Technology is part of the indirect or overhead is the more common lingo or word that's used in the private sector. So indirect ends up being a tally of expenditures that is attributed to the entire organization, not one department, but it's attributed to producing the budget or producing the checks that any program needs to pay the bills. And that indirect compilation of expenditures gets charged out to all the program budgets across the entire budget of the organization of the LEA as a percentage. So if you have a $100,000 grant that comes in, the County Office of Education would facilitate all of the aspects to adhere to the terms of those grants. If your indirect rate is 7%, then that grant is going to spend $7,000 towards the overhead or indirect of the organization in order to accomplish its purpose for the grant. So hopefully that helps answer the question. We could probably do a whole session just on indirect, but that's the basic definition of what it is. So I'm going to go over some of the definitions. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. They're here in the content for the slides. This can be for your reference in the future. But unrestricted versus restricted, let's spend a little bit of time on this. This area, it's the words themselves are intuitive, but what's interesting nowadays in public education is unrestricted funds that are designated as unrestricted sometimes always aren't as unrestricted as you might think. For example, within the LCFF funding formula, we receive supplemental and concentration funding as an add-on, and that is an entitlement based on the demographics of the students that we're serving. And yet it's considered unrestricted, part of our LCFF. We as LEAs need to spend those funds for the enhancement and increased services for those students. So is it really unrestricted? It's called unrestricted, but we have to prove within our LCAP how it is that we're spending those supplemental and concentration funds. So when some of you answered that the County Office of Education budget is complex, yes, it is complex. Because even within the definitions of being unrestricted or restricted, there's aspects to it that create the complexity because it's not as intuitive as it seems. Grant versus entitlement, this is another one. Grants typically come to us because we applied for them or we filled out an application indicating we are interested in XYZ program and funding. Some grants are competitive by nature. They're only awarded to LEAs in a limited capacity, and some LEAs don't get grants that they apply for. Some grants come to us because we filled out a document and it's not competitive. So any LEA that fills out the document might receive it. An entitlement is funding that comes to an LEA because of the demographics of the students that we serve or the educators that we have as staff. So an entitlement is not something that we have to apply for. It comes because of the population that we serve. So enrollment versus average daily attendance. We're going to have an activity on this. So I'm going to skip over this one for a moment and go right to the activity. Is there anyone in here that is excited to do math? Because if you're not, you're going to pull out your phone and this is going to be a multiple choice question. So we're going to do an activity. All of us are going to act like we're the CBO or the fiscal team who calculates our average daily attendance. So here's our example. And by the way, this example is of one for a county office program. So it's your programs. Picture your community school or your court school. We've got 100 students enrolled. We need to have our students attend for 180 school days. Should sound familiar by now. But here's the detail where it gets complex and how do we calculate the average daily attendance? We've got 20 of them who attend 170 days, 30 of them who attend 160, and 40 of them who attend 140. So let's take a wild guess and we're going to do a Mentimeter. So if you have your phone out, you should be prompted to go to the next one. We're going to make it easy on you. You've got a choice of 3 numbers. So if you weren't writing it down, that's okay. You can just guess and maybe draw from your experience of what it is that your team at your county office of education shares is the county office of education typical average daily attendance. As you might know, our programs typically have a lower attendance rate than our school district friends or our charter school friends. So it looks like we've got some folks still entering their answers. Okay, the first one, the 84 and the 76, we've got a tie. Let's see if anyone's going to enter a tiebreaker. Let's see if we can get a 7th response. Okay, we have a 7th response. Is there any more? I'll wait a couple minutes here, couple seconds, in case there's somebody grabbing their phone. I see some of you still might be entering. All right, we've got another input of 76. Okay. Well, let's see if we can't pull up the answer. The next slide shows us how. And if you don't know how to calculate the average daily attendance, that's okay because you have staff for that. Your staff works very hard to calculate the attendance. And if you want to know how it is they do, this next slide shows the actual math formula. We all know that nowadays with critical thinking math skills, we have to show our formula on how it is we got the answer we did. If you were one of the 7 people, I think it was, that picked 76.67 as the average daily attendance in this example, you were correct. And this is a typical average daily attendance for our county office programs. As you know, our students don't come to school as often as the school district students, and that's okay. We engage them as often as we can, and we know our attendance is lower in our programs, and our funding for Corton Community School actually helps us out with that because it also reflects a higher amount per student. So, okay. Back to some more lingo. I'm going to skip over this page, the LCFF, LCAP, actuals versus budget. So this terminology refers to the actual revenues and expenditures. So when your fiscal folks say the actuals are, it means that's really what occurred. And whether they say the budget, the first interim, the second interim, they're typically referring to their plan or the projection that it is that you guys approved as the county trustees to have happen. And then the actuals are what really happened, how much revenue we really received, and how much we actually spent. So fund balance versus cash. This is one that came up on that first survey that we had audience participation. You guys had a lot of points about exactly this topic. There was a comment, cash on hand, cash versus fund balance, etc. So this must be a topic that is heavy on everyone's minds, and it should be right now. As our fund balances start to diminish in LEAs, you will start to hear more about cash flow challenges. And so the difference between a fund balance and cash. So remember when I was describing the budget of an LEA, the budget itself is a projection of how much revenue we're going to receive and our expenditures. And then it's our fund balance is what's left. That fund balance, though, when we talk cash, cash really is the money at the county treasury in the bank. So cash does not come to a school district all at once ahead of the school year. So if your budget, if a county office budget has $100 million in revenue, and we're going to start the school year, we know we're going to get $100 million in revenue. We do not receive that cash in July to start the school year. We receive the cash in various points of time in the revenue streams that come from all the various aspects who send money to schools. So cash truly is the cash that's in the bank. Fund balance is the amount on paper that we have left, even though we're waiting for more cash to be received. So here we are coming up to June 30th. We're in May right now. We're coming up to June 30. We're going to close a fiscal year. On June 30th, if you can believe it or not, we still will have not received all of the cash from the revenue we are owed for the prior fiscal year for 25-26. So it's unbelievable that this happens, but it does. On June 30th, we are still owed money. So that's considered an accounts receivable in our books. So the difference between the fund balance on June 30th and the cash is how much should we have left between our revenues and expenditures, and how much cash do we actually have? Well, we're allowed to account that grant that owes us $10,000 because they owe us. So we're allowed to account that as our fund balance, even if they haven't given us the cash, because it's owed to us. So hopefully that helps demystify that conversation. And then cash on hand, that term, it's a common term. I've heard it before. Cash on hand just means if you were to pull up the county treasury bank account for the school's pool, how much cash is in the balance today. So it's just cash on hand, meaning today is typically the reference. So hopefully that demystifies some of the terms you guys have heard. I'm going to skip over the multi-year projection and let's move on to the budget cycle. So the budget cycle itself, you're probably familiar with this cycle. By June 30th, coming up really soon, you guys will have heard the public hearings for both your LCAP and your budget. And by June 30th, you need to adopt both the LCAP and the budget. It's very important that as county trustees, we get to adoption before July 1. So by June 30, that's one of our biggest to-dos. And on July 1, we start a new fiscal year. On October 15th, the County Office of Education is required to submit its unaudited actuals from the prior fiscal year to CDE. Now, some of your county office functions, if you guys know a little bit about what your team at the county office is doing, during the time between July 1 and September 15th, they are very busy helping school districts close their books and charter schools. So the charter schools and the school districts have to close their books by September 15th. So why is it that the county office has until October 15th? Well, guess what? Part of our work is to also review part of that fiscal oversight role and support and validate the school district's unaudited actuals. And when we submit our financials on October 15th, we are also validating and submitting all the school district's budgets or actuals as well. So that's just part of our fiscal oversight process. So the County Office of Education gets one more month because we review the school district's unaudited actuals as well. And then our work is never done. So we turn right around and we start working on our next projection. So after we're done closing the books from the prior fiscal year, we start focusing on how is our current school year and fiscal year going. We review all of the expenditures that we had planned to spend, and we work on providing an update to give to all of you at the county trustee meeting in December, by December 15th, an update. And that update is information as of October 31st. Then moving right along, we will do the budget cycle again, another update by March 15th. This is the one that has information as of January 31st. And for any LEA that has a qualified or negative certification, there is such a thing as third interim. That's not what it's called in the education code, but it's commonly referred to as third interim. If you have a qualified or negative certification, you're going to update your budget one more time, and it's due on June 1st. And then we start the cycle all over again. So our work is never done. Your fiscal people and your CBO leading that effort are very, very busy all year long, as you can imagine. So you as trustees, let's focus on what your role is in the budget process to support the team that is working very hard to give you that summary of what's happening financially. So reviewing the programs and services. So the budget itself is only a numerical representation of the actual schools, students, and programs and services being provided. So do you really want to hear about the numbers and the account code structure, or is your role more interested in the actual services and the achievements of students that's happening? Because from my perspective, I think it's a lot more exciting to hear about the programs and services themselves. So if you're wondering what it is that you could ask about the budget, the numbers themselves are pretty straightforward, and there's so much regulatory compliance behind how it is that we are to account for expenditures that an idea is for you guys to actually spend more time asking about the services provided, how many students we're serving, and get information about the programs and services provided. That's really how you're going to be able to dig deep into the concept of getting to budget adoption. So some ideas from drawing from how some boards in different counties might examine this is doing budget study sessions. So we just talked about in June, one of your roles is to have two different meetings. They're there on the right on the slide. We have a public hearing, and then we also have budget adoption. So we already have two board meetings in June. But leading up to those action items that you're responsible for taking, you might actually want to hear more about the programs and services that are numerically presented in the plan or in the budget. And you might want to do that leading up to June. So some ideas are maybe in March, April, May. Start to get information about what programs and services and how many students are expected to be served for the following fiscal year. That way, when it's time to adopt the budget, you have a good idea of the plan in which the county office is going to be leading And your questions might just be about that numerical presentation of the cost for all of those programs that you know is being operated. Okay, here's another slide about the fund balance. We had gone through this already, so it's there for your reference. Cash, another slide about cash, which seemed to be a topic of interest also. So cash is the main reason, and it's the only reason that an LEA would be insolvent or would need an emergency appropriation. In the private sector, the common lingo is called bankruptcy. Since we're government, there's no such thing as bankruptcy for a government. We call in education, we have code sections that provide if a school district or county office of education is to run out of cash, they get an emergency appropriation. Because guess what? Schools don't stop operating just because the budget doesn't have enough money or we've spent too much. So bankruptcy is the private sector term, but in public education, we refer to it as needing an emergency appropriation. We never want to be in that role. And as county board trustees, you also don't want that to happen in your county. It is not good for anyone. If you just so happen to be in a county who has experience with a school district insolvency issue, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not good for the community. It's not good for the educators, the students. It's not good for the economic situation. The cost, the prices of housing, everything diminishes if you're in a town with a school district that has experienced insolvency or emergency appropriation. So one of your main roles as a county trustee should be that you know the county office has enough cash. So if you're not already asking or reviewing the cash flow report, please do so. You don't even have to read it yourself. You could actually ask your CBO during a fiscal presentation that they review the cash flow report and show you what line do I look at so I know we have enough cash. And very simply, if you want to look at on your own, go to the bottom row of that report and it'll show you cash balance. There's probably 1,000 figures, tiny little numbers on that page. You don't even have to read all of them. Just go to the bottom, and the bottom will tell you if there's enough cash for that month projected. So cash itself, we have wild swings in our cash balance. Here's a visual of what it looks like for LEAs. We start off the year with a little bit of cash. Our payrolls in August and September, or in July and August, are lower than they are for the rest of the year. I'm sure you can imagine why. We bring back our teachers and the bulk of our workforce, and their biggest payroll for starting the year is September. So you can see in our cash balances, this is a typical trend where our cash gets depleted because our revenues are not being received as fast as we're spending them as the school year starts off. Closing in on December, we get very low cash balances. Some of you might be familiar with issuing TRANS, tax revenue anticipation note. That's a form of a cash loan that government agencies can receive. It's anticipation of tax revenue that we're going to be getting, so they loan us money until we receive the cash and then we pay it back. It's a debt instrument. But the low point being right before December is because we have property tax revenue. All of you in your personal lives are probably familiar that you pay your property tax bill every December and April. Well, guess what? Schools are a big receiver of those property tax local funds. And so we wait to receive those cash deposits in December and April. So following this trend, you can see again, our cash balances go up. Which month? Closing in on April, we get flush with cash again, and then we start spending. So this is a typical cash flow chart, just to give you a visual of how complex it is, because it is. Cash itself is a complex topic. And we have about 5 more minutes. Are there any questions before I keep going through the slides?
Misty, there was one in the chat related to the indirect,
Okay.
um, and Judith was asking, can there be different rates of indirects?
Oh, yes. Every LEA has its own indirect cost rate, and indirect cost rates are calculated based on your expenditures. And it's today's indirect cost rate is based on your expenditures from 2 years ago. So the average indirect cost rate is anywhere between 5 and 9 to 10%. If it's anything outside of that range, the CDE is going to be analyzing the books because something might not be accounted for correctly. The range is usually between 5 and 9 or 5 and 10. 10 is kind of high. But yeah, they're posted annually. So if you're ever curious, you could do a quick look up on the CDE website and just type indirect rates. And you would see this giant chart with the indirect cost rate for every single LEA in the state.
But within your county office, the different programs, are they different?
No, the indirect cost rate is one rate for the LEA. And what you're referencing could be that we receive grants that have restrictions on the amount of indirect that we can charge. Some of our early education programs are typical programs that might have a limitation on the amount of indirect. Sometimes that cap is 4%, 5%. But the county office itself, when we accept to run a program, a grant, we have to accept the terms and conditions of the grant. So if a grant is coming to us and it doesn't allow indirect, or it has a limitation or a cap on the indirect, we can make that determination if we're still able to dedicate the amount of money that it would cost in order to run that program. So some of our programs cost the organization money from some other source in order to operate that program. Okay, so very quickly, let's go over the differences between a county office and a school district budget. So a county office of education, we receive very small percentage of unrestricted funding. This is in comparison to school districts. The majority of the funding in a school district budget is unrestricted. So we're almost the complete opposite of what that looks like between a county office and a school district. Districts also have the majority of their expenditures tied up in salaries and benefits. It's very typical that you might hear about a school district having between 85 to 92% of their revenues are spent in salaries and benefits. County offices, again, very different. Our typical salaries and benefits range anywhere between 50 to 70% is probably about as high as you'll see. And why is that? Because we are different. County offices of education receive a lot of pass-through funds. We receive a lot of funds that we contract out. We partner with other entities in order to accomplish the work. We contract with our school district partners, and we just classify our expenditures not at the same level with salaries and benefits that school districts do. Just the nature of the work is different. So if you didn't know that yet, that is a very good aspect to understand the difference between school districts and county offices' budgets. County offices have a lot of management positions in comparison to school districts. Now, why would that be the case? Because the nature and the function of a county office is to be that expert leader of all the things in public education, because our school districts and our charter school friends look up to the county office as that resource and expertise. And so therefore, we at the county office have to hire management level positions more so than school districts because we're leading them. So a lot of times I call this the onesie twosie programs at the county office. We might have one director of charter schools because that position leads all the charter schools in the county. And those are the programs where we just have one person. So if there's one charter school expert at a county office, it's typically a management level person because you want to have someone with that expertise and experience in order to lead that effort. So we have a lot of those types of positions at county offices leading the school districts through their work. School districts, by comparison, have more teachers and more staff who are serving students directly. We at county offices do serve students directly, but that's not the bulk of our work. The bulk of our work at county offices is support staff and supporting the educators who do work directly with the students. And then the final note is that county offices of education, we do a lot of fee-for-service contracts. So we get school districts and charter schools asking us to perform services because there's economies of scale within any given county. If we can consolidate a service such as technology, the financial system, maybe a student information system, typically, if we bundle all of the services together in one function, we can, as a county together, we can have more efficient services and get things at a better cost. Okay, we're going to move right along. I'm going to skip some slides, but I'm going to tell you about these ones. In the interest of time, we just have a couple more minutes. I have included lots of information, hints, and tips that you as county trustees can consider to engage when you're getting a budget presentation. So in June, coming very soon, you will receive probably 2 presentations from the budget hearing and then also on budget adoption night. So what is your role? Definitely ask questions. Be curious, look at the budget itself. Look from the comparison of how do the programs and services, do we have enough money for the programs and services that I heard being described? But ask questions from the perspective of not how the accounting is done, because your teams are stuck having to adhere to the standardized account code structure of how to do the accounting, but maybe ask more questions about the service and the program itself and not necessarily on the accounting. One common one that I've heard, just to give you an example of in reference, is maybe when budgets are tight, folks think that we can just do across the board cuts. Let's cut travel. That's a typical one that's said. Sometimes we receive grants that require travel. Part of the grant terms and conditions include that we send educators, teachers to a professional development in order to accept that grant. So it's not a good idea to globally have an ask of deleting or cutting a certain thing because you might quickly get the County Office of Education not in compliance with a grant term. So instead, I would suggest your role as trustees is to maybe ask questions. Are there any grants that are not self-contained financially? Are there any grants that are imposing on dollars that we could be spending on something else? Those are the questions that you might want to ask. I'm going to skip over these slides. Lots of things in here for your consideration of what it is you might ask your fiscal folks to let them know that you're interested, you're engaged, and you want to know more details. So hopefully this gives you ideas of what it is you could ask. Criterion standards, I always love to point out this report. The criterion standards is at the end of a budget. It's about 30 pages. The font, I think it's like font 2. It is so hard to see and it's so hard to read. So if you struggle reading it because of the font size like I do, get out your readers, whatever it is that helps you, pick something from that section. Your staff spend hours and hours and hours completing this section, answering the questions, and it is a way for an analysis to make sure that your county office is not outside of the standard deviation of any of the measures. it's something that's great to talk about, and no one ever pays attention to this section in the budget report, and yet your team spends a lot of time. So just pick a page and put your finger on it, and then ask that one, and allow your team the excitement to explain what that means, because they worked really hard on it, by the way. Okay, so that's about the end of our hour. It's 1 o'clock. There's a summary of what we have gone over. I did have one more Mentimeter if we had time that we could go back and forth, but in the interest of time, is there any final question that you might have that I can wrap up with?
I have a question. Is it okay if I just say it?
Of course.
So in our county, it's Contra Costa County, we have a couple of local districts that have had big financial problems, and the superintendent sent them letters. And when you were talking, you mentioned the April 15th or whatever submission to the CDE or something, that somehow includes something about the local district's budget. And as a trustee, all we do is approve our county budget. So I wasn't sure what you meant exactly there.
Oh,
And
yes. One of the main roles of a county superintendent of schools is fiscal oversight of all the school districts in the county. And so we review the school districts' budgets, we review their actual expenditures, and we take action on whether or not their budget is approved, their first interim, the status of the certification, if it's positive, qualified, or negative. And so your county superintendent has a huge role. It's one of the main functions of their job, that they are heavily involved in the school district budget. Your point is well made, though, Sarah. As county board trustees, that is not your role. Your role is oversight of the county office of education budget and making sure that the county office is financially solvent and stable. And then the county superintendent is the one who is responsible for making sure the school districts are financially healthy. So very good question. We do keep our county board trustees informed. If we're experiencing any fiscal distress in our county, we give them a heads up just so they're aware of which school district. And if it's in their trustee area, they have a heavy interest of supporting that district as well.
thank you.
I have a question. I find it well and good to be interested in what the programs are and what they're doing for students and so forth. But the bottom line is they still have to stay within the black. They can't spend too much. So yes, I do want to know about what each program is spending.
Yes, that's great. The format of the SACS presentation doesn't provide for giving you that detail by program. I'm sure you're familiar with the budget reports in the standardized account code structure format. There's a column for unrestricted and restricted, and then the total. So you're right. If you want to know the totals by program, your team at the county office needs to present the information to the board in a different format that demonstrates the revenue and expenditures by program. I'm sure each county office has its own practice of what the reports look like. If you feel like you're not getting the information by program, that's definitely something that you can ask for, of seeing what it is that you spend on Corton Community School, or what is the career education program look like as far as revenues and expenditures. I'm sure that's something that your county superintendent and their team would be happy to provide you guys. Well, we have gone over a couple of minutes. I apologize for that. Again, I appreciate everybody who was able to enroll today. If you ever have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out. Thank you again for attending, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of information.
Great. Thanks, Misty.
Thank you. Great job.
Bev?
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Misty. It was an excellent presentation. And I do want to remind everyone that this will be posted on our website. So if there's things that you want to review or go back and look at, you certainly can do that. And again, Misty, thank you. Thank you so much. We have some upcoming events that we'd like you to look at. And the first one that's upcoming is the weekend of the 16th and 17th, which is next weekend. And it is going to be ACCB's Knowledge to Action. It will be in person in Northern California, in Ukiah, in Mendocino County. And we want to invite you all, if you have not already done so, to sign up to attend. It's going to be an excellent, excellent program. And as I just mentioned, our conference in Ukiah, other upcoming events are June 11th at 7 p.m., our special topics, which is running for office. And if you're thinking about running for office again, or are running for office again, or know someone that will be running for office, this will be an excellent special topics session to attend. And to be determined, we'll be understanding the new report from UCLA Transformation Center, Beyond One Size Fits All Education Approaches, Rethinking California's Alternative Education System. And we don't have dates for that, but as soon as we do, we certainly will let you know. And to register for any event we have, please go to our accbe.org page and click on events.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And if you would take a moment, the link to our evaluation form is in the chat. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions on future session items. So with that, we will hang around if there's any additional questions. Misty, if you had another couple of minutes, and if those of you need to go to your 1 o'clock meetings, feel free to do so. Thank you so much.